Welcome to today's session. Today we will be touching upon why successful human capital reporting is much more about stakeholder management than anything else really. So not so much about choosing metrics out of the box or visualizing them. My name is Søren. I'm heading up people analytics with Hempel. Previously, I headed up people analytics for Grundfos, and before that, I spent a lot of years in consulting, working as head of analytics for Innova. I'm really passionate about people and numbers. So people in organizations, how we organize, how we thrive, how we work together, but also on the other side, the numbers and the statistics and research methods has been part of my work the past 15 years. The agenda for today is to touch upon founding the people analytics function. Also, of course, doing basic reporting, because that's the first task for many of us starting out in people analytics. We will touch upon the workflows and the skills that you need on your journey. But also I will bring an example of some of the work that I've been doing in Hempel on our first reporting solution. And finally, wrapping up, identifying some of the key takeaways for setting yourself up for future success, because that's exactly what you will be doing during the beginning parts of your journey. So first off, why even discuss basic reporting? Yeah, well, lately, I think in the past years, we've seen quite high growth in numbers of job openings in the people analytics space. So that means more people will deal with similar challenges. And I think we're a conference like this, we're here to help out for one another and spark up a conversation around things that's important for us in our daily work. Also, usually, what you're met with in the beginning phases of your journey is that perceived immediate need from decision makers. Oftentimes, people analytics roles are founded because we need to be more data driven, and that oftentimes equals reporting. But also one thing to be aware of, that people analytics roles, they are oftentimes founded at a non-strategic level. So that calls for a lot more stakeholder management. And finally, I think it's necessary to discuss some of the things you can do in the beginning of your career to set yourself up for future success. So let's have a look at the typical people analytics journey. So as you can see here, we have two dimensions, time and value, that we bring to the business. And the usual journey could look something like this. So as you go along in time, you'll create more and more value. And at some point, you will be facing a tipping point, because what you're struggling with in the beginning is to find projects and build credibility within the organization, or build your capabilities around the topics of people analytics, and also building some infrastructure so you can get things done. But at some point, when you have created value, you will also face greater pull from the organization. And if you can't deliver on that pull, people will tend to look elsewhere, and that could be a potential danger for you. So that's why if you find yourself in situations where you're unable to complete projects, that's time that you need to prepare for, because you need to have solutions that are scalable. So instead of continuing the road to your future demise, we would very much like that we continue the journey towards future success. So focusing on people analytics should be all about letting people analytics be part of the value chain, meaning that we have some client drivers in the organization and we have some business outcomes. So the business outcomes we're striving to make, that's around commercial value, good employee experiences, and organizational change, because of the insight we can bring that will eventually lead to change. But the drivers for this, that's our business strategy. That's our stakeholders' challenges. That's the people and HR strategy. And you in the people analytics function, you will find yourself in the middle of it. But you need to focus on the things to the left. So align everything you do to the business strategy and to stakeholder challenges, because then you set yourself up for delivering commercial value and good employee experiences and the right organizational change. So focusing on one of the usual suspects when starting out, that's reporting. And I'm offering here a process how you can approach it. So for me, it's all about these 5 things. So align, design, build your solution, deploy it, and optimize it. So aligning, that's all about identifying the stakeholders in your organization, map them out for all the relevant reporting that you will be doing. You need to prioritize your business goals within each reporting track, so to say, but also across tracks. And eventually, you need to sign off your proposed solution with the decision makers. So there's a lot of stakeholder management to be considered. You also have to do some other work that calls for different skills, and that's be designing your requirements for reports. So whether be it in dashboards or standalone reports, you need to consider how you would like to present the data to the audience. Of course, you also need some skills to be building reports or dashboards. And if for all the different things that I've already mentioned, if you're missing out on any of these elements, you need to partner up with other people in the business. Ask for help. Identify your own strong sides, but be also honest about where you could benefit from having other people helping you out. Once reporting is built, you need to test it. You need to get functional sign-off in the organization before you eventually go live and deploy reports. When you do that, you need to educate and communicate and campaign, because that's when you have your product. So you need to educate the users of the reports. You need to communicate about them. You need to campaign for them. You need to create ambassadors for the product that you've done. And that is a lot easier if you have aligned with the right stakeholders from the very beginning. So even though that you probably choose a lot of relevant metrics yourself, that's very, very important that those input come from stakeholders in their own words. Finally, when you have deployed your solution, you need to measure the business impact, because as we stated in the beginning, everything in people analytics is really about the business. So if you're not touching upon business relevant tasks or challenges, then it should have no place in your reporting setup as well. You also need to measure user experience, because the intended way that you set up things might be interpreted a little bit differently. So could be navigation within a dashboard or the visualization of graphs, etc. So those are some of the more detailed things. They are not the most important ones, but it's still important for you to consider. And finally, reiterate. So begin the process all over again when you enter the next phase of reporting, because this is not something static. This is something that will live in your organization. So my own journey in this, I've mapped out stakeholders in the company. So the stakeholders that I serve, the stakeholders that I depend upon, and I invited those people for conversations, basically to let me understand what their areas of in the business is all about. So not a discussion around data or numbers, but basically telling them that we need to know where we are today in order for us to efficiently and effectively navigate to where we want to be in the future. The steps you take after these kind of interviews or engagement with your stakeholders, that's when you get the nitty-gritty stuff in place, choosing the different metrics, aligning with whatever the stakeholders' input were. So my conversations evolved around the why and the what. So ask people to tell me in layman terms the purpose of focusing on this in the organization. So could be talent acquisition, onboarding, learning, talent and succession, whatever. So basically having a conversation starting with the why and the what to the current challenges. So what are some of the things that we would like to be doing differently, or what are some of the elements that's difficult when we try to decide things? Where are we trying to look for the best possible answers, etc., etc. But also the second part of interviews would be about the future. So how does good look like? Envision the future 3 to 5 years out. What are people dreaming about? Where would we like to take our organization? And what calls do we see for a need in change in behavior? So and all of these elements will guide you towards what things you need to be putting into your reporting setup, because in your reporting setup, that's where you will support all these elements that stakeholders bring to the table. In my case, we ended up after 5 different interviews with 125 unique inputs. And as you can imagine, that's quite a lot, and of course not doable to put into a reporting format all at once. So what you need to do is, of course, group things and create a structure for meaningful reporting. So as I touched upon before, we covered different areas in our case. So human capital metrics, human capital management, learning, onboarding, recruiting, and talent succession. So regrouping all the input that you've got from stakeholders into something more workable. That is a suggestion I would make for you. But the thing is, you cannot go back to stakeholders with these input because they are still too granular. So you need to regroup things within a certain headline. And you can put a headline to those subgroups, because it will eventually take you to a place where it's easier for you to discuss these kinds of headlines with stakeholders when you are to prioritize the input that you have gotten. So eventually choosing what needs to go into a dashboard. So in this case, we uncovered 25 different topics that were talked about, covering 125 unique inputs. And we made a selection here. So covering 28 out of those 125 inputs and 13 of the 25 different topics. That's easier to discuss with stakeholders, and the thing is that if you're doing it this way, you can also align every input back to something a stakeholder said at one point in time, and that should be aligned to a strategy input or a business challenge. That's the reason for you choosing it when it goes into your reporting setup. What these kinds of interviews also uncover is that typically there's some barriers to get where we want to be. So missing alignment in definitions across the company, data availability is not there, etc., etc. So that's also something that you would need to cater for when building your reporting solution. And that's why we have offered a definition of all the metrics that goes into the reporting setup. And then you need to also balance the need for higher level reporting. So at the strategic level for business leaders, decision makers, but also at the more operational level, which is why you need things to be broken down on certain things, because sometimes the operational side of things, they need those details. And one thing you could do to align internally is to lean against the standard. In 2018, a standard from ISO, the ISO standard of human capital reporting came out. So what it basically does is brings guidance to human resources around reporting, both internally and externally, covers 11 areas and 58 different metrics with calculation methods and definitions. And what it will do for you is it will improve internal and external credibility. Probably also in the future, it will establish norms, because more and more organizations will look towards a standard way of defining things. And to push this even further, the SEC ruled in December last year and encouraged companies to report on 3 different areas of human capital reporting, especially attraction, development, and retention. So that's also something that I see will push in the direction of using standards like this. Some of the benefits is, of course, that externally you can provide evidence to your customers that you in the company provide certain requirements that customers value. You can also assure internal compliance because you have certain definitions. So aligning, for instance, with finance on FTEs and headcounts, that's one of the usual suspects. But externally, it also distinguishes your organization from competitors in the marketplace, but also enable your business to look at key metrics that's important for your business, but also look for the same things in other businesses if your strategy is about mergers and acquisitions. So, of course, introducing this standard also comes with risks, and you will have no assurance that you will meet all the requirements in the standards. And in my opinion, you shouldn't strive for that either. Use it as a guiding principle. New definitions may require changes in business practices, and that's something that you need to be aware about. And also selecting several metrics in the dashboard, that's no guarantee that you will actually improve business outcome. But if you have done it in the right way, aligning the stakeholder input and the strategy to the numbers that you put into the reporting solution, then you're well on your way. So one thing to have in mind also when trying to prioritize is that if you have some design principles that you can share and align with stakeholders, that will help you along the way. So everything that goes in here needs to be traceable to a business task or a challenge. These are the 5 design principles that I've built in our company. Secondly, we also need to focus on simplicity and alignment across. We need to be bringing context into play when visualizing things. We need to be building solutions that scale. So instead of you building a multitude of different reports around the same metric, choose the right metrics and the appropriate breakdowns that will enable you to be building dynamic reporting. And finally, consider the audience. Something needs to be done at a strategic level, something at a tactical level, something at an operational level. And as you can see to the right here, that's sort of the classification of the different roles or users that we have for reporting. So business leaders, business partners, managers, and employees, and the level of information we intend to bring to them. So have that in mind when you think about reporting, and again align the needs of the stakeholders to your proposed solution. So time's almost up. The key takeaways here, things I would like you to think about is always align your approach in everything you do to the business strategy and the challenges that you have. Let stakeholders pinpoint business problems in their own words, because you will create followership, you will create ambassadors, and when you then propose a solution that caters to those needs, then you have someone who will back you up in the future. Be sure to create alignment and internal balance. So strive for that one truth, not defining headcounts or FTEs differently than finance, for instance. And all in all, align with the stakeholders. I mean, if you serve them well, you will also set yourself up for success in the long run. And please, even though that you're starting out, and this is a typical task around reporting, don't see this as something finite. See it as the beginning of your conversation with people in the organization. And if you're doing well along the steps, you will set yourself up for future success, because then people will know what you're capable of, understanding the business, translating them into relevant metrics that's useful for them, presenting them in the right way, and pinpointing business issues. And then you can sort of build upon that. So you start to educate, you start to continue the dialogues, and then bring back more and more of those projects around people analytics, and more insights where you can actually say, well, out of these 10 different things, these are the 3 most important ones, and that's a step after taking on reporting. So thank you very much for listening. Maybe there's time for a few questions, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.